Hi, my name's Mike Paustian, and I farm with my family in Scott County, Iowa. My family's farmed here for over 150 years. We grow corn, soybeans, and we also raise hogs. Today I'm going to talk to you about corn. This is an ear of corn that's off one of the corn plants that you can see growing in the field behind me. It's harvest time right now. It's October, and the corn that you see growing here was planted back in the spring, in April and May. So we use a special machine called a planter that lets us plant lots and lots of kernels of corn at the same time, and each of those kernels will grow into a plant that will then hopefully develop an ear eventually. So before it can do that though, it has to grow, and the things that it needs to grow are water, heat, sunshine, and nutrients from the soil. So it uses all of those things together to grow, and it takes about 5 months for the seed to grow from when it's planted in the ground until it grows into a full-size plant that's ready to harvest. So the things that happen during the growing season are, as the corn's growing, is we obviously need the sun and the water. So that we're relying on lots of sunny days, and then we're hoping that it rains enough so that the corn can keep growing. We need to keep track of how much nutrients are in the soil for the corn to be able to grow and develop. So some of the important nutrients we can add to the soil if it needs more, but there's a lot that's already in the soil that the plants need. So farmers will test the soil to make sure it has all the fertilizers that the plants need to grow. So while the corn's growing in the field, it's really dependent on what the weather is doing. And farmers can't really control what the weather does, so we hope that there'll be good weather, but sometimes there's not. This year it was a little too dry during part of the summer, and so that stresses the corn a little bit, and it's not quite as happy. It doesn't grow quite as big, and there won't be quite as much corn to harvest sometimes because of that. Now this fall we had too much rain, so that makes the fields muddy, and then the farmers can't really go into the fields when they're too muddy because their machinery will get stuck and it'll make big ruts in their field, and it would just make a big mess. So sometimes it's good to have rain in the fields when the crop's growing, and sometimes it's bad to have rain on the field when farmers need to be in the fields harvesting the crop. When it gets to be harvest time, what we mean by harvest is when we go into the fields and then we take all the ears of corn that are growing out there, and we want to get all the kernels of corn, but we don't want anything else. So in order to do that in a timely manner, we use special equipment like a combine that you can see behind me. So what the combine does is it goes through the field and it pulls the ears of corn off of each corn plant. They go in through the combine, it spins them around and knocks all the kernels, the individual kernels of corn off. It keeps those, and then it just spits the rest of the corn back out onto the ground, and that will act as fertilizer for the next time we grow something in the field. So the combine is something that a lot of smart engineers over many, many years developed in order to help farmers do a better job at harvest and to be able to do it faster. And so we then take those kernels of corn that we harvest, we load them onto a wagon or onto a truck, and then we take them to wherever it is that corn needs to go. The farmer's job is to grow as much corn as they can and hopefully get a good yield, which a yield is how much corn is produced in each field. And so if you have a good enough yield, then hopefully the farmer can earn some money by selling his corn to somebody else who needs to use it. And then they use that money to pay for the fertilizers that they use to grow the corn. They use it to pay for the machinery, the tractors and the wagons and the combines that they have to use. So that's one way that farmers can make money. What is an acre? So an acre is a measurement of a certain amount of ground, and an acre is about 1 football field. Okay, so this field that we're in right now is the size of about 80 football fields, okay? And the amount of corn that you can produce on 1 acre varies depending on how well it's grown that year, but this field right now is yielding about 250 bushels of corn per acre, okay? So a bushel of corn is about 56 pounds of corn, okay? So the combine that you see behind me can hold about 300 bushels of corn, and then we have to empty it into a wagon so that it can continue to harvest more corn out of the field. The combine can harvest about 8 to 10 acres in an hour. So it would take us about 8 to 10 hours to harvest this 80-acre field that we're in right now. Why is harvest so important to farmers? Well, harvest is kind of the end of the growing season when all of the work that the farmer's been doing all year is finally ready to be taken out of the field. So it's very important for farmers to get into their fields and get their crops harvested, because if they wait too long, then the crops could be damaged by wind or snow or hail or lots of different things. So it's very important that farmers get in their fields and get their crops harvested when it's time. Because Iowa is the #1 producer of corn in the entire United States. So there's a lot of corn grown in Iowa, and there's a lot of farmers out there who need to harvest all of that corn so that it can be used lots of different places all over Iowa, all over the country, and all over the world. My favorite part of harvest is being out in the fields and finally getting to find out how well the crops did that year. We put a lot of work in during the entire year to get the crops to grow well, and it's nice to finally see all that work pay off at the end of the year. So for this field, we might take a piece of machinery and drag it through the ground, and it would mix a little bit of dirt in with all the pieces of corn plant that are left. And that helps to recycle that residue that's left from this year's corn crop so that next year's corn crop can use it. We might also put some fertilizer on getting ready for next year. On our farm, we use a lot of pig manure as fertilizer. So we'll take manure from our pigs and we'll inject that into the ground, and that will help feed the next crop that we grow in the field. So corn gets used for lots of different things. We use a lot of the corn on our farm to feed our pigs. So we haul it back to our farm, we store it in a bin, which is just kind of like a big house that you just put corn in order to keep it from spoiling. And then we'll grind that up and feed it to our pigs. Some other corn might end up going to an ethanol plant where they use the corn to make ethanol that we can put into our cars and use to drive our cars. Other corn might end up going to a place where they use parts of the corn to make food products that people use, or even things as different as plastic. So there's lots of different things that corn gets used for. Some of it gets used here in the United States, and some of it actually gets sent overseas to other countries where they use the corn that we grow here. What kind of corn are we growing in this field? Well, we call this kind of corn field corn, and this isn't quite the same thing as the sweet corn that you might have gotten in the grocery store and might have eaten at your house. So sweet corn is a special kind of corn that has lots and lots of sugar in it, and that's why it tastes good and we like to eat it. So this kind of corn, you could still eat it, but it wouldn't taste nearly as good as sweet corn. This is a special corn that animals like to eat, and it also can be used for making lots of different products, and can be used for making ethanol and other things. So it looks very similar to sweet corn, but it's a little bit different. When the ear of corn starts off, it's very, very small and has these tiny little rows in it. And each of those rows will divide into 2 rows. And that's how you end up with an even number of rows of kernel on each ear. Corn is a renewable resource. What does that mean? Well, it means that we can grow more corn every year. And so we can renew that resource by growing it again and again and again. And it can be used over and over and over every year, because we just plant new seeds and grow new corn plants every year. That's different from other things that are not renewable resources, like coal or oil that we get from the ground. We can't make more of those every year like we can with corn. So that's one of the differences between corn and some other types of resources that we use. What I enjoy most about being a farmer is getting to work with my family and getting to provide other people with food and products that they can use every day in their lives. Thanks for joining me here in the field today. I hope this was able to answer some of the questions that you might have had about what farmers do and also about corn. Thanks.